From goblins' rides to the slippery slope of the dark arts, Hogwarts Legacy isn't all sunshine and butterbeer. In fact, some of the game's darker moments might just Depulso right over kids' heads. Beware, minor spoilers ahead for the plot of Hogwarts Legacy. In Hogwarts Legacy, players can befriend a Slytherin student named Sebastian Sallow, who can in turn teach the player a few dark spells over the course of several side missions. Some of these spells are in fact unforgivable curses, dangerous magical charms that have been outlawed by civilized wizards. With such heavy magic at his disposal, including the deadly Avada Kedavra spell, one might think that Sebastian Sallow is pretty much a villain, right? Well, not exactly. Yes, Sebastian ends up going down the wrong path to the point where his rage becomes unhinged and violent. However, his quest started out with pure intentions. Throughout the game, Sebastian only seeks to cure his sister of the ailment that is slowly killing her. This leads Sebastian to do things he might not have ever done otherwise, especially as he grows more desperate and his sister's condition worsens. Younger players may see Hogwarts Legacy as a black and white tale of good wizards versus bad ones, and much of it does play out that way, right up until the game's ending. However, Sebastian truly believes he's doing the right thing, and even the horrible moves he makes comes from a place of love. Sebastian may be irredeemable by the end of the story, but he definitely didn't start off things with wicked intentions. Harry Potter creator and author J.K. Rowling has remained in the news pretty consistently over the last few years, and for reasons that have upset a large section of the fanbase. The author's comments about the transgender community have cast a long shadow over the franchise, to the point where some fans have outright boycotted the game. That's why it came as such a surprise to learn that Hogwarts Legacy actually features a transgender character, in the form of Serona Ryan, the owner of the Three Broomsticks pub.
Welcome. Butterbeer's on me.
Although Serona doesn't figure heavily into the plot of the game, the inclusion of a trans woman in the wizarding world has been seen as a win by many people in the gaming community and Harry Potter fandom. However, others believe that Serona Ryan may not be the most shining example of representation, and according to them, a lot of it has to do with her name. A number of critical eyes, including Queer as Folk showrunner Jacqueline Moore, have pointed out that Serona Ryan's name begins with Sir, and that her last name is traditionally a male name. This unfortunate bit of wordplay, intentional or otherwise, probably goes right over the heads of younger players. Aside from fan concerns over Rowling's comments about transgender rights, another common argument against the Harry Potter series is its depiction of goblins. Some readers and viewers have criticized Rowling's decision to depict goblins in the world of Harry Potter as greedy, scheming bankers, arguing that the author leaned on anti-Semitic stereotypes to describe the creatures. Comedian and longtime Daily Show host Jon Stewart famously commented on the goblins in Harry Potter on his podcast, arguing that he couldn't believe that Rowling chose, in a world full of fantastic creatures and magical feats, to feature what appeared to be caricatures of Jewish people running a secretive, tightly guarded bank. Stewart joked that Rowling might have looked at a caricature from anti-Semitic propaganda and developed the characters from there. The scene from the film doesn't do Rowling's defenders any justice, as it presents goblins with even bigger noses, even pointier teeth, and an even bigger obsession with money. The comparison was so prevalent that even the irreverent Pete Davidson had to comment on it on SNL.
But who controls the banks? Jews, obviously. Little giant-nosed Jew goblins.
Luckily, Hogwarts Legacy takes a slightly different route with these highly intelligent beings, adjusting them into a portrayal that is much more socially acceptable and less stereotypical. While the game doesn't drastically change the physical appearance of the goblins, it does do something more nuanced with their storyline, giving them a chance to be more than money-hungry bank tellers. What it doesn't do, however, is make wizards less mean to them.
The wizarding world will crumble!
Okay, we're not gonna say that Ranrock, the game's main goblin antagonist, is totally justified in all of his behavior, but the goblin rebellion that plays out in Hogwarts Legacy is rooted in very real prejudices, and it makes sense why the goblins eventually decided to rise up. In the wizarding world, even in the modern-day stories populated by Harry and his friends, goblins are seen as lesser forms of life. Even though they have a high level of intelligence and they're literally math geniuses, goblins are subject to heavy scrutiny and regulation. They're not allowed to carry wands and are generally treated as untrustworthy among wizard society. Most upsetting of all, wizards seem to believe that goblins are fine with being treated as second-class citizens. The treatment of goblins and elves is often seen as one of the most questionable aspects of the Harry Potter franchise. When the Goblin Rebellion begins, it's ignited by a desire for goblins to be free from prejudice and given the same rights as the humans in the wizarding world. The battles eventually escalate and become much more brutal and bloody, but again, it's hard to argue against the basic desire to be treated fairly.
I don't want respect from the likes of you. All you do is insult people.
The protagonist of Hogwarts Legacy joins the titular school at the age of 15, as opposed to the standard enrollment age of 11. Beginning classes as a fifth-year student doesn't really seem to be much of an issue though. Not only does the main character manage to catch up pretty quickly, but they are a bit of a prodigy, picking up advanced skills and executing them without much trouble. Much like Harry Potter himself, the protagonist is a bit of a Mary Sue who is instantly great at pretty much everything. Point blank, it must be really frustrating to be this kid's classmate. Imagine studying for 4 years only to be outmatched in every way by someone who just picked up their first wand. Of course, there are reasons for this from a development standpoint. The developers told Game Reactor that they felt uncomfortable sending an 11-year-old into tense combat scenarios, not that this ever stopped the franchise before. So the protagonist was aged up a bit. This also allowed the character to properly engage with the more mature themes in the story. Older players are a bit more likely to notice the seams when it comes to the world building in Hogwarts Legacy. Even if these concessions were made out of necessity, it's hard not to see the overachieving main character through the eyes of fellow students, who have put so much work in already. And that's not even touching upon their tendency to break into strangers' houses and chug their half-empty drinks. But that's a bad habit for another time.